Hello, this is Blaine McCormick with the Hand Camera School of Business at Baylor University, and welcome back to a series I'm doing on the Balanced Scorecard and Foundation and helping you maximize your points. This is part 4 of the Just Right series, and this one we focus on leverage. So let's jump in here and start where we always start, with how they define leverage on the Balanced Scorecard and Foundation. And you can see our usual Just Right pattern. You can have your leverage score can be too high. You can have so much debt that you don't get any credit. Or your leverage score can be too low. You have too little debt that you don't get any credit. What they want is a leverage score somewhere between these strange numbers, 1.8 and 2.8, and we'll define how we get to those numbers and how we manage to stay between those numbers on the following parts of the video. So let's just take a hypothetical company, like an oil company. And let's just say you own an oil company. You've got some oil wells and some proven reserves and a refinery and some inventory. And all those assets together are worth $100 million. Well, leverage captures the relationship between what you own and how you financed it. It's a number that signals the financial structure of the company. And so let's say you've got $100 million in assets that you own, and you paid for those assets with $50 million worth of debt and $50 million worth of equity. That would lead to a leverage score. In Foundation, they define leverage as assets divided by equity, and so the math here is very easy. We take $100 million in assets divided by $50 million in equity, and you have a 2.0 leverage score. And once you learn how to read leverage scores, it signals a lot to you about how the company's is financially structured. On there. Let's look at some balance sheets. I'm just going to compare 3 different balance sheets here to illustrate how leverage rises and falls. On this balance sheet, we have our total assets here, just over $40 million. And we can see that they've been paid for with 50% paid for in liabilities or debt and 50% paid for with equity there. So our leverage is 50-50, and that gives us a leverage score of 2.0, meaning if we divide our 40 million in assets by 20 million in equity, we would get a leverage score of 2.0. And you'll see how that leverage changes if we go to an organization that doesn't have very much debt. So here's a different balance sheet. You can see 33.6 million in assets, and that is funded almost entirely with equity there, 75% equity, 25% liabilities. And in Foundation, this would get you a leverage score of 1.34, which wouldn't get you very good points on the Balanced Scorecard there. This one is a slightly different financial structure. We have 38.5 million in assets here, and it's funded almost entirely with debt. And so you see almost 29 million in liabilities there and less than 10 million in equity. And so that gives us 75% liabilities, 25% equity, and a leverage score of almost 4. So we're getting, as you might hear in business lingo, a leveraged, highly leveraged company. This isn't highly leveraged, but it's more leveraged than what we usually want in a company, and certainly more leveraged than we want in Foundation. You won't get the scores that you want on your Balanced Scorecard. So that's a little bit about how leverage works and what it looks like from a financial structure standpoint. Let's talk about some of the common problems in managing leverage. In round 0, you inherit a company that doesn't have very much debt. In fact, you've got almost 21 million in assets right here, and those are primarily funded with equity. You've got $5.5 million in cash in the bank, and so we take your assets over equity, and that gives us 1.6 as a leverage score. And I can tell by looking at that, like, wow, this company doesn't have very much debt, and I need to grow. Starting in round 0, I need to grow, and I need to grow profitably. And so, how am I going to finance my growth? Well, given my leverage score, I've got room to take on a lot of debt, and so I want to take on some debt. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add $10 million in assets, which might be capacity and automation. And this is a very simplistic illustration here. But let's say I add $10 million in assets, and so that increases my asset base here. And let's say I pay for that down here with $10 million in debt. So my liabilities go up, but you'll notice that my equities don't change at all. And again, that's a very simplistic illustration. but that does move my leverage score to 2.4, which is right in the green zone, and that allows me to get full points on the balanced scorecard. Let's look at a later round problem here, round 6, 7, 8, maybe round 5. The big problem in later rounds for successful companies is they have way too much equity, which usually means they have way too much cash or retained earnings there on their balance sheet. So let's just look at a different company here. Let's say this company has 130 million and some change in assets, and that's primarily equities, and so we have a very low leverage score of 1.25. Let's say that about 82 million of that is in cash. And so what we want to do here, we have way too much equity. We've got to start getting our leverage score up. Okay, we could borrow a lot of money to get our leverage score up, but that's really not what we're trying to do here. We would have to borrow a lot of money, and probably more than we could spend on expansion. And so what we want to do to get our leverage back into where it needs to be is take about $80 million, which is a very large dividend, but take $80 million and chunk it out the window to our shareholders. They're going to love us, but we have plenty of cash down here to do that. And so let's take that dividend and let's see what happens here. So when we give that $80 million dividend, we reduce our assets by $80 million. We also reduce our equity by $80 million because we reduced our cash by $80 million. And that brings our leverage score back into range where we can start getting full points on the balanced scorecard. We're not so cash heavy because that cash is an idle asset there. And so we're kind of positioned again to start growing. Maybe we finance that with cash some, with debt some, but we aren't choking on our cash anymore. And that's kind of a common late round problem there. Let's say you have too much cash in later rounds. It's a common problem for successful companies. It's a good problem for successful companies, but you're still not going to get your leverage scores. What you can do, you can retire stock, meaning you can buy back stock, and that burns your cash. You can retire bonds, and that helps burn your cash as well. Or you can do what we did. We can pay a dividend. We paid an $80 million dividend, but we just as easily could have retired 20 million in stock, retired 20 million in bonds, and paid a $40 million dividend to reduce our cash, and that could have done good things for our leverage as well. And so as you do these moves, as you're planning the future rounds, go to your pro forma financial ratios, and you've got leverage here. As you make your decisions, you can see your predicted leverage score, your pro forma leverage score, given the decisions that you've made, and that way you can manage it a little bit and keep an eye on that on the balanced scorecard. And so there you have it. It's that easy on leverage. It's a very easy thing. Your financial structure is very easy to manage. I find students master this pretty well, but just keep in mind, not too much debt. You don't want to get over 4 on your leverage, or you have too little debt down here. You don't get any credit there either. You want to be right here in the green zone between 1.8 and 2.8 to get full credit for your leverage score in Foundation. And so I hope this is a useful video for you. Good luck managing your leverage and other just right factors, and come back and watch another video sometime.